Today I'm going to be talking about the article that I read, which is about comprehension strategies to help adolescent students. And my strategy is an evidence-based instructional routine, and it's a four-step strategy that can be used to help students that are maybe struggling with comprehension or just any students that you have in general. Only 34% of 4th and 8th grade students read at or above a proficient level. So this means that over 50% of students that are in our middle grades do not read at the level that they're supposed to. And once students do get through those middle grades and into high school, that's when the material gets substantially harder. So if they're struggling at that level, that really doesn't look good for them as they're getting into the higher grades and trying to get into college to better themselves and have a career. So it's really important that we tackle these issues with comprehension and reading at a young age so that they can build upon that foundation when they get into higher levels of education. Students need to engage in higher order thinking, be able to connect prior and new knowledge. So they need to be able to connect things that they already know and have already learned to new things that they're introduced to, because it helps it stick better with them. And they also need to be able to identify key concepts and main ideas in a story, just because one of the basic components of reading and comprehension is being able to summarize a text. And you can't summarize a text if you do not know how to pick out the main ideas and the main characters. So that's really important that we teach our students that. There is a four-step model that can help them with this. It focuses on explicit instructions, so everything that is done is going to be planned out, it's going to be intended, and it's going to be an explicit instruction. And the first step is that when you introduce your text, you want to supply background knowledge, explicit instruction of things that the students need to know before they read the text. For example, if you were having the students read a text about the American Revolution, you would want to make sure that the students knew a little bit of the history behind it, that they knew that the people that had colonized the New World and were founding America were struggling with being ruled by people that lived overseas in Great Britain, so that they could understand what they were about to read and know the situation that was set up before they started reading. After that, the students need to have explicit vocabulary instruction. So this is especially if they're going to be reading a academic text or an expository text, which would be a textbook or a newspaper or any type of article. There's going to be words that are unique to that genre of writing, and so the students may have never heard those words before, so they need to have explicit instruction in what those words mean. Another big thing that you're going to come across when teaching students how to read is what this article calls sophisticated synonyms, which is basically a bigger, more sophisticated, fancy version of a simple word that students already know. So an example would be ginormous or humongous is the same thing as big, but it's a more sophisticated way of saying it. So teaching students how to create a parallel between a more difficult word and a word they already know makes it easier for them to understand the text. After that, you want to make sure that students are able to pick apart the main idea and the key ideas and create a main idea statement. So that's going to be step 3. You're going to want to create a lot of scaffolding and modeling of this part because it does have several steps within it, and you want to make sure that your students are able to do it properly so that then they can do it by themselves. So step 1 would be that you want to identify the who or the what in the story. This is going to be the main character, the main subject if it's an expository text, an educational text like I was speaking about earlier, or just the main subject of the text. After they identify the who or the what of the text, then you want them to be able to identify the main key components of the story that happen to the who or the what. So the main ideas, the problem in the story, the solution in the story, any conflicts that come up, just main facts that are basic to the summary of the story. And you want them to be able to pick those out. After that, you want them to be able to combine those two to start making what we call main idea statements, which are sentences, just one sentence that sums up what the whole text means. And after they do that, they can decide on one main idea statement. They may have a couple of different versions and then they can pick one. Attached now, I'm going to put in an example of a word map that they can use to do the main idea. It has a column for them to list the who or the what in the story. It has a column in the middle for them to list the specific details that happen to the who or what. And then at the end, it has a column for them to list and combine those two details to start making their main idea statements. Also, at the bottom, it has a spot where they can write their final statement. So after scaffolding this, and I would definitely use the think aloud method, I would read a short text and I would say, okay, I think that the who in this story is, and then I would fill in the blank. And then I would go through and say, these are the main ideas and the main events that I think happened to the who or what in the story. And then I would go through and make my own main idea statement before I ever expected them to do it, even with me, just so that they could have a clear picture of what it's supposed to look like. And then after they did it enough times, I would even put them in groups of 2 or 3 where they could work with some of their peers to come up with a main idea statement. And this article says that eventually, after doing this enough times, after having it modeled for them, after working through it with their partners, they should be able to just subconsciously do this when they read. So they'll get to a point that when they read a text, they are picking out that main idea and forming the main idea statement without even thinking about it, which is the goal that you want them to be at, especially when they get ready for taking state tests and standardized testing and college readiness exams, because it saves a lot of time if they are able to just pick out those things without having to think about it, because then they're able to focus on the more difficult concepts or the more difficult aspects of the text. The fourth and final step involves going over and reviewing what you've read with peers and being able to break through and go through questions. A great way to do this, especially when you have middle grade students, is to take a book, whether it's a chapter book or a textbook, and write questions, like 1 or 2 questions, on sticky notes and stick them at the end of the section of text where the answer would be found, so the students can read through that part of the text. When they get to a sticky note, they stop reading, look at the question, and then answer it before they move on. So this way you don't have them reading 20 pages of a textbook and then answering 5 questions and they can't really remember what they read on the first page. It allows them to gradually get into that groove of answering these more complex, higher level thinking questions without just being thrown in there and having to read a bunch of text and pick it out. It gives them a little bit of a baby step to getting to that point, and that's really helpful. Also, just anytime you pair 2 different students together that may be at different levels or may have different views and ways of looking at a text, it allows them to bounce off of each other and form a better understanding and get a different perspective than they would normally have, which is very helpful in making sure that they understand the text as best as possible. So this strategy, I think, is very effective at teaching students comprehension. I would probably introduce it first with expository text, because this article mentioned it is a lot easier, and it kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, because not only are they getting that comprehension of reading the text and breaking apart the main ideas and concepts, but they also get to learn that information that is in the text, whether it's about the American Revolution or about marine life or some type of research-based text. They're going to pick up the important details of that, and that'll be new knowledge that they've acquired in addition to learning how to comprehend text. So overall, I think that this strategy is very effective. I think that it can be made a lot easier and could maybe be used with even lower grade students, like in some of the primary grades. And I also think that it can be built upon and made harder for high school age. But overall, I think that it's very helpful in being able to comprehend a text. I think it makes it a lot less intimidating than it can be. And I would definitely use this in my classroom to help with reading comprehension. Thank y'all.